Hey everyone, Nabil here, and today I'll be reviewing Wilson's Heart for the Oculus Rift CV1. This game has always been one of the bigger names in the Oculus lineup, but due to its somewhat mixed reception, I waited for a large enough sale before picking it up. So is the game any good? Let's get started. Story. In Wilson's Heart, your character, Robert Wilson, finds himself in the middle of a deserted and broken down healthcare facility. Something strange and unholy must have happened here, as evidenced by the supernatural occurrences at every step and the menagerie of monsters stalking the halls. If that weren't enough, Wilson quickly finds out that his heart has been replaced by a strange and mechanical device of unknown origin. So recovering his human heart and escaping this hellish place become the overarching objectives of the game. Wilson eventually encounters a few other lost souls. There's the decidedly Eastern European looking surgeon Bella, the brash and self-centered Kurt, the intelligent and leggy Elsa, and the token helpless little girl, Lucy. Whether he is discussing strategies with fellow survivors or facing down the latest vile beast, all expository dialogue and cutscenes are viewed through Wilson's first-person perspective. Apart from this, further backstories can be gleaned through newspaper clippings, comic books, and environmental interactions. While the game does feature some jump scares and a brooding atmosphere, I wouldn't call it particularly scary. This is pulp horror with campy and outlandish aesthetic. Overall though, it's a fairly lengthy story with plenty of mysteries and twists along the way. Gameplay. Gameplay in Wilson's Heart boils down to teleporting from one predefined node to the next and interacting with the environmental objects. These predefined teleportation nodes are represented by Wilson's silhouette, which glow when you're visiting a spot for the first time and are darkened if you've been there before. The silhouettes also convey your character's eventual orientation and pose. The game makes full use of the Oculus touch controllers. Specifically, the grip and touch buttons serve largely the same function. They are used for grasping and picking up objects, turning pages, opening doors, etc. Then, clicking the left or right analog sticks initiates teleportation to the nearest node. Finally, the capacitive sensors are used for pointing and clicking in-game buttons. However, not all objects in the environment can be manipulated, and your hands need to be placed exactly where the devs intended for certain interactions to work. The capacitive interactions in particular feel a lot less fluid than in more recent games like Arctica.1. Like in most adventure games, a lot of scenarios require you to find particular items in order to get past obstacles. These items can be placed in your inventory and pulled out as needed. Things like keys to unlock doors, a blunt object to bash in a vending machine, or matches to ignite a furnace. The titular Wilson's Heart also comes into play quite a bit. This device can be upgraded by combining torn pages and unlocking various powers. You can illuminate light sources, throw it as a projectile at enemies, retrieve objects from a distance, or even electrocute baddies. Some of the game's most inventive puzzles and boss fights also incorporate the heart. Now speaking of boss fights, this game has a ton of them and they're all mostly fun. You'll encounter some horror movie mainstays like werewolves, vampires, tentacled beasts, possessed playthings, and much more. Some battles are straight up fist fights where you'll block incoming flurries, throw back projectiles, or counterattack. Others require the use of environmental objects or your heart to deal damage. These are usually fairly lengthy, multi-stage affairs and are similar to boss fights from old-school games. Unfortunately though, two things can seriously hamper your enjoyment of boss fights. Firstly, the game requires you to stand firmly in place. If you move an inch out of bounds, the action freezes until you return to the designated spot indicated by Wilson's silhouette. In a lot of the boss fights, you might be tempted to physically dodge attacks or extend your body in order to accomplish a distant throw. The constant freezing completely destroys immersion and should have been removed long ago based on fan feedback. Secondly, the game features quick-time events in which you are given only a few seconds to react before being killed instantly. Often, visual cues designed to guide the player are obscured by the game's dark visuals. Worse still, these QTEs may be preceded by fairly lengthy cinematics. Overall, this results in players viewing the same scene multiple times until by some miracle they finally figure out what to do. Graphics and immersion. The game features a black and white art style that some may love but others might hate. I didn't mind the look and felt that it added to the game's spooky atmosphere. Furthermore, the limited color palette enabled the devs to go nuts with detail. This is most evident in the monster designs, which are top-notch from both a creative and technical standpoint, evoking the classical representation of these creatures. The human character models are intentionally cartoony and exaggerated, but feature impeccable detail in their skin, hair, and clothing. While the facial animations do a respectable job of conveying emotion, the characters' body movements seem slightly off. The environments are varied, well designed, and in keeping with the time period. Many are also adorned with beautiful hand-painted portraits and landscapes. Generic hallways, these are not. I also really like the particle effects such as fire, smoke, and electricity, which have three-dimensional depth and really get in your face. In terms of negatives, I would say that a lot of the reading materials in the game, like comics, newspapers, and instructions, feature really tiny text. This, coupled with the dark environment and Oculus's limited pixel density, makes them quite unreadable. Another issue is that the game has very few graphical settings, only low, medium, and high, without options for tweaking anti-aliasing, super sampling, etc. Sound. The game does feature a musical score, though it's not very memorable. The sound effects are decent enough, especially those generated by your heart's various powers. The game features a number of prominent voice actors who are, for the most part, very well utilized. RoboCop himself, Peter Weller, voices Wilson. While Wilson does display a range of emotions such as fear and compassion, for the majority of the game he's an irate old-timer who's had it up to here with these spooky shenanigans. Alfred Molina plays Bella, providing a somewhat stoic and restrained performance. Though he shows the empathy of a medical professional, something seems kinda off about this guy. Rosario Dawson in particular does a good job as Elsa. She is smart and effective as a partner for Wilson. Michael B. Jordan Scurt, on the other hand, is evasive and flippant, and you just want to smack him at times. Final thoughts. Wilson's Heart was the game that Oculus fans were clamoring for but grew disappointed with after release. A lot of the reviews cited the game as being a misfire or being crippled by technical limitations, whilst others claimed that it had substance and was VR's first can't-miss game. So it was with some trepidation that I picked up Wilson's Heart during the recent Halloween sale. Overall, I enjoyed Wilson's Heart but couldn't love it thanks to a host of poor design choices and technical issues. Firstly, what I liked. While it's not a particularly scary game, it has a moody and palpable atmosphere. Also, the game's black and white visuals do little to detract from the game's clearly high production values. A lot of love and attention was given to the monsters, characters, and environments. At the same time, the voice actors do justice to their roles, imbuing these characters with sufficient personality and emotion. The game is also really fun to play thanks to inventive puzzles and boss fights. And unlike a lot of other VR games, this is a fairly lengthy adventure that gives you your money's worth. As for negatives, this game commits the cardinal sin of VR. It takes away your freedom. You're stuck using node-based teleportation and have to stand perfectly still or risk freezing at inopportune moments. Only certain objects can be interacted with, but they must be held exactly how the devs intended, with no room for experimentation or approximation. Essential narrative or gameplay-related texts are often rendered unreadable thanks to tiny fonts, poor lighting, and low headset pixel density. And finally, long, unskippable cutscenes are combined with insta-death QTEs to provide a truly fun killing experience. Now, if you can stomach these issues and want to sink your teeth into an otherwise well-made adventure, then consider buying the game the next time it's offered at a discount. So that's it pretty much for me, guys. Till next time.